So we're talking to Emily Bourke, who's the campaign manager at The Wheel, and we'll find out what The Wheel is all about. You're very welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here.
It's great to have you here. So you might tell us, if you will, when The Wheel was founded and why.
Absolutely, yeah. So as you said, I'm campaigns manager with The Wheel. We are the representative body for Irish charities, community groups, voluntary organisations and social enterprises in Ireland. A little bit of a mouthful. You might call them non-profits. And The Wheel has been around since 1999. So we're celebrating our 25th anniversary this year, doing that kind of representative work for these organisations. So basically, our job is to help make it easier for charities and other community groups and the like to do their work, and to help make sure, particularly in the area I work in, to help make sure that their work is seen and that it's recognised for what it brings to Irish society and to the wider world.
Brilliant. I understand you've 2,300 members. How did you build that up over the years?
I think now, and I hope I'm giving you the right information, I think we've just hit 2,400 members.
Oh, wow, very good.
So the numbers keep on ticking up, which is great. As I said, we've been around for 25 years, so a lot of it has been, connecting with those organisations as they do their work on the ground, and those have naturally built up over time. We would run a lot of events, we run a lot of training, we have a lot of, I suppose, opportunities to get out there and meet the people doing this work, and members come from that as well. And we have a very dedicated membership team as well who would look after our members and encourage new people to come along. It is, I suppose, we represent groups of all shapes and sizes, so everything from large health provision charities with multi-million euro budgets, right down to local residents associations or small community groups. And something that's very important to us is that for those smaller groups who have low or no budget, if your organisation has a turnover of less than 25,000 euro a year, then membership of The Wheel is totally free. So we've got a lot of smaller organisations on board for that reason too.
So there would be huge variety in the kind of organisations affiliated to you.
Very much so. As I said, you can, if you look at our list of members, it's always kind of eye-opening because it is a lot of them. So there are ones that even I, working on this all the time, wouldn't always be so familiar with. But you have disability services, you have addiction services, you have healthcare services, all the way kind of down to outdoor environmental groups, to people who run board game societies and bring people together, to men's sheds, all the way down to residents associations or tidy towns groups or beach cleanups. So it's one of the things I suppose that's part of our job is letting people see that all of these people, and someone who's the CEO of a large mental health charity probably doesn't see themselves in the same sphere as a volunteer on a beach cleanup. But our job is to kind of help everyone see the bigger picture and see that all of these people are coming together to do something massive, something great, and all working towards a flourishing society for us all.
Right.
European and local elections are upcoming. Mm-hmm. Next year there'll be a general election. There's a new Taoiseach. So maybe you'll tell us a bit about the campaigning that you do at that level.
Yeah, so we've a few pieces of work going on around that at the moment. Number one, as you mentioned, local elections, and they're rapidly coming down the tracks at us. We will, in the next couple of weeks, be launching our local and European election campaigns. Our local election campaign, our campaigning work comes under the umbrella of the Future is Community. So that's what our campaign work is I suppose branded as. And for our local election campaign, we are releasing a pledge that candidates for local elections can sign in support of the community and voluntary sector in Ireland. So we're asking them to pledge to work with these organisations to champion them within local government, to really do what they can to make sure that the supports that they need are there, to make sure that they can continue to do what they do in our society. So we'll be doing a lot of outreach over the next, I suppose, between now and June, to get as many candidates as possible to come on board with those and to sign the pledge. At the same time, I suppose the European arm of the wheel, if I can call it that, we've an EU programs team. They're doing work around engaging on similar subjects with EU candidates. Again, really trying to make sure that this sector is seen for the work that it does, and that is represented at the highest levels in Europe as well as locally here. We would also, and again, I suppose one of the things about our work is that the themes tend to run across what we do. So we will, we'll have a budget coming up again in October. So in the next couple of months, we'll also be launching our pre-budget campaign, which again looks for those really, really vital supports that let these organisations keep existing. Things like multi-annual funding, things like equality of pay for staff in charities versus in state organisations who are providing healthcare, disability services, that type of thing. We've looked for reform to VAT schemes. It's there's a wide range of things that we would engage on, and they tend to run across our campaigns because the needs of the sector are quite consistent. As I said, we've been around for a while, and it is similar topics that come up again and again. And one last piece that's, I suppose, quite important and quite visible at the moment is some campaigning we've been doing. I just mentioned the question of equal pay, and we have been campaigning with a group of organisations around this question of equal pay. You might be familiar with this.
We are, yeah.
So basically, for any of your listeners or viewers who aren't, there are a group of organisations that are referred to as Section 39, 56 and 10, which probably means nothing to most people. But Section 39 organisations are disability and health organisations. Section 56 are maybe child and family agencies. And Section 10 are usually homelessness organisations. So they're delivering really, really vital services on behalf of government. But on average, because of the structure of their funding, their staff, it can vary a lot, but on average are earning about, or it's changed now, but when we did our research in the middle of last year, there was about a 10 to 12% pay gap between staff in those organisations and staff providing similar services through state organisations. Now, there have been a number of public sector pay deals since then, so that gap has likely widened since we did that research. But so last October, there was an agreement to provide a pay increase to staff in these organisations, but that has not actually materialised in many cases for that. So we're part of a campaign that is working to get that rectified, and to ensure that these organisations can continue to provide, as I said, those vital services in disability, health, children and family, and homelessness.
I know a lot of charities, and they rely on community employment for their staff. Mm-hmm. Community employment is generally a maximum of 3 years. And it does affect the relationships that are built up. You just about get a relationship built up, and then you're gone, and somebody else comes in, and it takes a long time to build it up. That's one of the challenges that charities definitely have.
Yeah, absolutely. And in these Section 39, 56, 10 organisations, it's obviously people are employed differently to community schemes, but there is that gap, that I suppose that gap in continuity that comes about because rightly so, if you're earning 10 to 20% less than someone doing the same job elsewhere, people are leaving these jobs. They're going into the public sector where the terms and conditions are better. And so it means that in these services, there is a lot of staff turnover. There's a very high rate of new people coming into roles, of experienced people going elsewhere, which means that there is that so much energy is then put into just building people's skills, into training them, and it's very, very hard to keep those experienced staff around. And it is, as you say, a huge, huge challenge for charities.
How do you measure your progress?
Our progress, the wheel, specifically.
Yes.
That's a big question. That's a hard question.
That's why I asked it.
So we do quite a lot of work in quite a lot of different areas. So we would there's no one single measure of progress for us. It's spread across a lot of different areas. One obviously would be membership. Do organizations want to come and join us and be members of the wheel? And is that continuing? Is that building? And we've been really happy to see that continue. Another is around, we do continually, survey our members to find out what their levels of satisfaction are. We're usually 90% plus each year. People are happy with the job that we're doing. With things like campaigns, more around this Section 39, similar types of work, it really is about looking to see whether the dial is moving in the right direction over time. This kind of work there's very rarely an instant win. It is, you're chipping away over years and years and years at subjects, and you're taking the small wins that you can get, and you're trying to incrementally see things move in the right direction. So that's a piece we look at. And then more broadly, as I said, we do a lot of, so the advocacy, the campaigning side of the wheel is one side of the wheel. The other thing we are focused on is really helping people in the sector to become more skilled, to get the training that they need, to make sure that they have that available to them. So we have a significant chunk of the organisation is dedicated to that. And we would track, the number of people coming through our trainings, which has continued to increase year on year. One of the, I guess, positive things that has come out of the pandemic and everything shifting to online is that we would have a lot of members based in Dublin, but then a lot of members who are scattered more disparately around the country. And we've been able to reach a lot more of them through online training, which has become a lot more popular and a lot more in demand since the pandemic. So seeing those, I'm giving you a very long answer to your
No, it's okay.
But basically seeing that reach continually increase is another piece of progress for us. It really is, as I said, it's a lot of different areas that come together. But I mean, fundamentally, it all comes back to we are doing this work for our members and for the organizations that are members of the wheel. And so it really is, are people continuing to come to us, and are they happy with what we're doing? That's the real core of what we do.
I wanted to ask you, why is it called the wheel? I have a fascination with names.
That's a question I have never been asked before. Now, I have not been here for 25 years.
Okay.
So I
guessed that.
I've been on this earth longer than 25 years, but I wasn't in the wheel then. But it is very much that visual of, if you picture yourself, and our old logo, we have a very different logo now, but the original logo for the organization was an image of a wheel with all these spokes coming to the center. And it is that idea of, okay, we are the wheel, we're here in the middle, but what we're made up of is all these organizations that are the spokes, and they create the structure around which this exists, and together we are something, that thing being the wheel.
Very good. How are you funded?
We're funded through a mix of membership fees. As I said, it's free for a lot of members, but some would pay for it. Our EU strand would get EU funding to do that promotional work. We get some funding from the government's National Training Fund for our skills and development work, and some other pots of often government funding, sometimes grant funding, to enable the various programs and supports that we run. So it's a very, I mean, as you find with most, or a lot of charities anyway, it's a mixed pot of funding.
Yeah. Do you fundraise?
We not beyond membership and people paying for training isn't really fundraising. No, we're more a support for organisations that do fundraise than a fundraising organisation ourselves.
Have you got any upcoming events that will be of interest to charities?
Yeah, well, as I said, the local election campaign is launching there in the next couple of weeks, on the 25th of April. So and we'd love to see charities, help us spread this around to local candidates. There are a lot of them. So
yes.
It's a lot of work to reach them. So we would love anyone who's working in charities or community groups around the organisation to help us spread the word about it and encourage their local candidates to take the pledge. We also next month have our annual summit conference coming up, which is a brilliant opportunity for anyone working in the sector to attend. We come together in Croke Park for the day, and we have a whole range of plenary talks, of parallel sessions on all kinds of subjects of relevance to people. So everything from fundraising to governance to social enterprise. Our theme this year is obviously, because it's our 25th anniversary, we're looking around a theme of learning from the past and looking to the future. So we'll be talking about really where the sector has come from, like what can we learn from those last 25 years, what's changed since the wheel has been around, and where are we going from here? What are the big topics on the horizon? What are the changes coming that we're going to need to grapple with?
If there's anybody from an organisation listening today, how do they get in touch?
So our website, wheel.ie, is really the first port of call. You'll find all the event registration there, campaign information, really anything that you want. But if anyone has any questions they want to ask a human being, they can reach me at emily@wheel.ie.
Very good. I'll ask you to give all that out again in a second, but I have a couple more questions.
Yeah.
You're not off the hook just yet. I see that you offer advice and guidance. You might tell us some of the subjects you offer it on.
Yeah, so it's once again, our membership is so varied that we would get a lot of requests from many different arenas. So, I mean, there'd be some fundraising questions that would come our way. A lot of the kind of advice that we would give is governance focused, so around board responsibilities, around the structure of an organisation, around how to register as a charity in the first place. So really that kind of the meat and bones of good governance, that would be a big one for us. The topics, as I said, on which we campaign, we're not the only ones working on a lot of those subjects, so we would be in dialogue with a lot of other organisations around approaches to that, and how we can tackle that. We would do a lot of HR work for, again, a lot of this, you'll be able to tell that a lot of organisations don't necessarily have the resources, especially smaller ones, to have in-house HR expertise or things like that. So we would be a kind of broker, I suppose, for a lot of that. I think I'm probably forgetting something there, but
don't worry. Those
are kind of a lot of the main bases anyway.
And what about some of the issues that you advocate on?
As I said, I suppose I've gone through a lot of those in our campaigning piece. Okay. But I suppose the big piece, because we would try and focus our campaigns around, we speak to our members, we find out what it is they need, what it is they want. A lot of that work would be around the nature of state funding. So multi-annual funding is the big ask that comes our way advocacy-wise every year. A lot of organisations are funded on a 12-month basis. So you have to reapply for funding every year. And it, once again, takes up a significant amount of resources. And so we would be advocating particularly for state funding, which provides a lot of funding to the sector. We would be advocating that those contracts are given more regularly on a kind of 3 to 5 year basis, so that they can plan, so that they can put more effort into the end of the line work that they're doing, rather than the continual reapplying for funding. That would be the really, really big one, without launching off into a long list of others.
Very good, very good. And you have blogs on your website. You might let us know some of the issues contained in those blogs. Just a couple.
Oh, yes. Now, what would some of the recent ones we would have covered? You're going to have to give me 1 second.
You take your time.
Because you're catching me off guard with this question. So I suppose we would usually have updates from our CEO on a fairly regular basis to try and keep people in the loop. You'll see quite a few of those if you look at our blog section. Recently, we would have covered the subject of something that's very of interest to us in the field that we work in. Is there was a study released recently in which Ireland was ranked as the loneliest country in Europe. So we had, I think, about 20% of people who said that they felt lonely some or all of the time. And it was higher than any of the other surveyed countries. And something we're very conscious of is that, a lot of the work being done to combat that is being done by charities, by community groups. Everything from, older people's befriending services to support groups for things to, as I mentioned, I said a board game society earlier, even that in itself, that's tackling loneliness. So it's something we're very interested in, very concerned to hear about. And so there was a recent blog that we had around not taking our community sports for granted when they are there to tackle this huge issue. And some other pieces around, we've had EU awards. We did a blog about the organisations that won that. Again, you'll see HR topics here and there around hybrid working, supports for workers for that. It's so varied that really I would encourage anyone who is interested to have a look at wheel.ie/news and click on the little blogs tab, and you can have a look for yourself. There's a long archive of them and plenty to dig into.
Would you have contact with immigrants now, recently arrived immigrants in the country, or long-standing immigrants?
In what sense?
Like to help them to fit into society, our society?
So we ourselves don't give those kinds of direct supports, but we would have a lot of members who are organisations like the Immigrant Council of Ireland, the Irish Refugee Council. We have a different campaign that I didn't somehow mention throughout all of this, called We Act, which is it's a campaign to celebrate the work of all of the people involved in charities and community groups, whether they're staff or volunteers. And we're actually working on a project with the Irish Red Cross at the moment, which tells the stories of people who have come from Ukraine and who have either started working or volunteering with charities since they've arrived. So we've in the last few months started doing some work on that particular subject. But in general, it would be members, perhaps more than ourselves, who would directly give those kinds of supports.
Well, coming right to the end of our time, is there anything else you'd like to put out into the domain?
Oh, I feel like I've said a lot at you.
You have.
So I mean, I'm very conscious that I spat out a lot of information there. So if any of it was of any interest to anybody listening, as I said, wheel.ie is the place to come and find more information on anything I might have mentioned in the last 20 minutes. And if there are any particular questions that anyone has, if they'd like, some more information on the local election campaign or anything like that, my email address is emily@wheel.ie, and they're very welcome to reach out.
Great. Emily, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thanks so much for having me. It's been a delight.
Thank you.
It's been our pleasure.